You're listening to Thunder and Lightning on SuperTalk Mississippi, covering Mississippi State sports like nobody else. With Sports Talk Mississippi's Brian Hadad and Robbie Falk of On3 Sports. Now get ready for Thunder and Lightning.
This is Thunder and Lightning here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Brian Hadad and just Brian Hadad here with you on a Friday morning. Thanks for joining me and starting your weekend with me here at supertalk.fm or wherever it is that you get podcasts from. We appreciate you guys out there, especially our listeners out there in our, especially our great, you know what? I did it again. I've completely brain farted, something that I say literally every day. We appreciate all you guys out there, especially our servicemen and women out there taking care of us. That's what happens. If I change a single word, it throws me off. I got it, though. I want to thank our sponsors over at Strange Brew Coffee House and Churn and Spoon Ice Cream. Start your day the right way with a trip to the drive-thru over at Strange Brew Coffee House here in Starkville or at Brupolo over in Tupelo. It would be a little weird if Brupolo was in Fords Creek.
That would be a little weird.
Wherever you are in our great state, you can enjoy Strange Brew Coffee each and every morning. It's just a click away at strangebrewcoffeehouse.com. I want to thank one of our loyal listeners, John. Dropped me and Robbie off a couple of gift cards to Churn and Spoon, so I will be taking advantage of that. I'm trying to lose weight here, but I can't resist the call of the Churn and Spoon, so I'll make it over there. Thank you, John. We appreciate you. The Mississippi Beef Council wants to remind you that beef, it is what's for dinner. If you're cooking out this weekend, nothing beats the sizzle of beef on the grill. I'm hoping to cook out this weekend. We'll see if the weather holds. By the way, just go ahead and let you know, this isn't a future Brian, but earlier guy is going to talk about the weather. Mississippi State has not made any decision regarding the weather, Mississippi State baseball this weekend. Just go ahead and get that out of the way. Whatever you're doing this weekend, make beef part of your plans. Go grab a steak and throw it on the grill, or go grab a steak at one of our awesome steakhouses across the state of Mississippi. Anywhere you go, you want to eat beef. Beef, it's what's for dinner, thanks to our friends at the Mississippi Beef Council. College Corner, collegecornerstore.com is the place to find the maroon and white merchandise that you're looking for. You are looking for new, great Mississippi State gear. It's there at College Corner. All of the logos that you want, all of the name brands, whatever it is you're looking for, maroon and white for yourself, for your friends, for your family, for your house, for your car, for your dog. Whatever it is, they got it at College Corner. 2 locations in Jackson. They're in Ridgeland by Fleet Feet, Florida by the Half Shell, or you can shop online, collegecornerstore.com. Restaurant Tyler is Starkville's flagship restaurant for lunch, dinner, or Sunday brunch. Best meal in town is always going to be at Restaurant Tyler. If you're going to be in Starkville this weekend, I cannot recommend enough that you take a trip over to Restaurant Tyler and grab a fantastic meal, be it lunch, if you want to go for dinner on Saturday night after the game, or if you want to hit Sunday brunch before you head over to Dudy Noble Field on Sunday, whatever it is, go get a meal at Restaurant Tyler. You will not be sorry if you do. Remember, the best meal in town is always at Restaurant Tyler. Priority One Bank, 16 locations around the central Mississippi here to serve you. Let PriorityOneBank.com be your guide. They'll show you not only where they're located, they're going to show you how they help you invest, manage your money, and prepare for the future. Now more than ever, it's important to get answers about your money when you want them, on your schedule. Talking to somebody who not only knows your money, but knows you as well. You can't get that with those big corporate banks. You need a bank like Priority One Bank that values your service and is a local institution. If you live in central Mississippi, you live near a Priority One Bank location. Let Priority One Bank make you their priority. Since Robbie's not here, we get a one-sided argument today about how Mississippi State needs to score more. Because that's exactly what tonight was. Mississippi State falls to Missouri 85-73 in a game that sees them shoot 36% from the field, 20% from three, and miss 8 free throws. They lost by 12. Now, that game was a 3-point, 4-point game. In the final moments before State began to foul, and Missouri made all of their free throws. Missouri really good from the free throw line tonight, 23 of 28. State shoots 36%. Hubbard, 8 of 22. He was really not good in the first half. 3 of 14 from deep. Melendez, 3 for 11. Harris, 0 for 3. Kugel, 0 for 7. What are we doing? What are you doing? Keyshawn Murphy had a really good game, 18 points and 8 rebounds. He started out slow, but he was really good, especially in the first half as State was cutting into the Missouri lead. And Sean Jones Jr. also in double figures, 10 points. Melendez has 12 points, but it's on 3 of 11 shooting. He did have 4 rebounds. I thought Melendez played okay. He just didn't shoot the ball well. But Harris and Kugel were just black holes for Mississippi State. They're 0 for 10 from the field. This is another game for Mississippi State. Defensively, they were terrible. They gave up 85 points. Missouri shot 49%. Now, State was better from the perimeter in this game, only gave up 8 of 24. None of the craziness that happened in that first game, but they still give up 85 points because they kept putting Missouri on the free throw line, and the Tigers hit a lot of their free throws, but they shot 49%, and State shoots 36%. And it's another game where if State makes 2 or 3 more shots, it's a totally different game. State had plenty of opportunities in this game. The wide open looks. There was one in the first half. It was the first half of I guess it was the second half that absolutely killed me. Where State's in transition, they get a shot fake, they outlet it to Hubbard. Hubbard has time to set his feet and bring the ball up, and he still missed. And I'm just like, I don't understand how a guy who makes so many difficult shots misses that one. But I guess if we're going to paraphrase from Ron Polk, that's basketball. This is a game where if you look back, it's about State's missed opportunities more than anything Missouri did. State had plenty of opportunities in this game to take the lead, to push a lead out, to maintain control of the game. And Missouri, give them credit, they just kept coming. I thought Missouri was the better team. Even when State was winning in this game, I never felt like State was in control of this game. They were out-rebounded by 8, were the Bulldogs, and that number was much higher in the first half. State did a better job in the second half. They out-rebounded them on the offensive end 14-9. You know, from a box score standpoint, State only turns it over 8 times, but they just don't shoot. They just don't shoot well enough to win. And that's what killed them in this game. Offense killed them in this game. If you want to tell me that, 85 points, how much of this comes from 2 things? It comes from State missing shots, which leads to 19 fast break points for Missouri, and State fouling on the defensive end. Missouri makes their free throws. If State just makes shots, you don't have to do those things. And I'm not asking State to shoot 65%. I'm asking State if they shoot 43% in this game, not a great percentage, but if they shoot 43% in this game, they win. They win. It's just, and Hubbard has 24 points, but it's on 8 of 22 shooting. He was 5 of 7 from the line. He did miss a couple of free throws. Just not a great game. Not a great game for Mississippi State. And so that's the story of this one. They will rue their missed opportunities, is how I would put it. Give credit to Missouri. They did play a good game. They played well enough to win. But at the end of the day, I thought Mississippi State, had they made their shots, would have won this game maybe relatively easily. I mean, they had plenty of opportunities. They shot 11 more shots than Missouri and missed 3 more. So Missouri is 27 of 55 and State's 24 of 66. And that's where you lose the game, is your inability to get the ball in the basket. I always go back to something. We have Mark Wise on pretty often on Sports Talk Mississippi. Great interview for college basketball. And he talks about, people say defense wins championships. Defense. And the object of the game is to score the basketball, to put the ball in the hoop. If you can't do that, you cannot win. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now that whoever State's matched up with, they're going to have to score 80-plus points to win, and they're going to have to shoot better than 36% to win. They're probably going to have to shoot 45% to win. And if they can do that, they can win. But if they can't, no chance. No chance for them to win. So just a disappointing game in that, first of all, because they played so much better than they played Missouri here a month ago. Like, they were in this game. They had opportunities. The game in Starkville, Missouri got ahead early and just crushed State the rest of the way. What wasn't the case tonight? And even when Missouri tried to, I think Missouri led by as many as 8 in this game. What was their largest leads there at the end? But they when the game was competitive, they led by as many as 8. And State was able to crawl back in and fight. And I was impressed with the effort. It's just they missed shots, and I just can't get over Kugel. 0 for 7. Well, what's his plus minus? I got to know. There's no way. It says he was a plus 7? How? Goodness gracious. I don't know how. Kugel 0 for 7. in this one. 0 for 3 from three-point range. 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He only had 1 turnover. That doesn't seem right. I got to be totally honest with you. Feels like he had more than that. He did have 3 steals. I don't know. Harris, couldn't even play him in the second half. He was a -5 for the game. Just what can you do? What can you do? Missed shots. That's what killed State on Wednesday night, on Thursday night there in Nashville. So now we wait. Selection Sunday, at least at this point, there's no drama. You know State's going to be in the tournament. If I had to guess, they're at best an 8, and at worst a 9. So not a lot of fluctuation. Who they'd play in the second round if they were to win doesn't change in that situation. Probably going to be matched up with the SEC is going to have 2 1 seeds. The NCAA will probably do everything in their power to not get a second round matchup of 2 SEC teams. So State's likely to be matched up with either Duke or Houston. Now, if Cooper Flagg is going to be out for an extended period of time, Duke is still a really good team, but they're not the same team without the number 1 player in the country. So that's an interesting one. Houston is the worst possible matchup for Mississippi State. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They will dominate Mississippi State if they play them. And then you talk about the 8-9 game. We'll just have to wait and see. It just depends. You look at Lunardi's bracketology, the most recent one. And he had State, I believe, as an 8. Let me see if I've got the most recent one pulled up here. So the one he had earlier today, he had State as an 8 seed playing Creighton with the winner playing Duke. The 8 seeds were State, Marquette, UConn, and Memphis. I don't think they would match if State were to drop down to a 9. I don't think they would rematch State in Memphis. So if they did, that would be great for Mississippi State because they were able to beat them. But at the same time, Memphis is a really good 3-point shooting team. So I don't know. Maybe that game was just a one-off. The 9s, if State remains an 8, the 9s right here are Baylor, Creighton, New Mexico, and Georgia. Obviously, they wouldn't put State and Georgia together in the first round. New Mexico would be interesting with Jans. He certainly would have some knowledge of how to beat them. Back in the day, he would have a great history against them. Baylor is a pretty good team. They have a elite player playing for them, a guy who they think will be a first round pick in VJ Edgecombe. State recruited him pretty hard. I think he actually visited here. And then Creighton, year in, year out, that's a consistent tournament team. So we'll see how it happens. The drama is there is none of that for Mississippi State. They will be in the field of 68. As should the women. The women should be in the field of 68. They are listed as a 9 seed in the USC regional. They would be playing the number 1 seeded USC Trojans were they to advance past Cal as who they had as the 8th seed. They're in the same sub-region as Ole Miss. So there is State would have to beat the number 1 seed to do that, but there is a potential Sweet 16 matchup with Ole Miss, who is scheduled to host their region, the Oxford sub-regional, as part of the Spokane region, I believe, so the West region in the women's bracket. Again, Selection Sunday, there'll be no drama for either team, though. Those teams should be comfortably into the NCAA tournament. So let's switch it over to baseball. Big series, obviously. Historic series in a manner. I'm wearing an orange shirt too, but it says Giants. I just want you guys to see it, right? It says Giants. It's not an issue. For State, 6-game winning streak. I'm kind of torn. 2 years ago, they I think it was like a 7 or 8 game winning streak coming into the start of conference play, and then it was just fell apart for them. Whereas last year, remember, they lost a game in Biloxi, and I've talked about it before. I was totally out on this team at that point. I was like, we will be doing a coaching search when we get to the end of May. There's no way around that. And then they were so good in SEC play. This is where the rubber meets the road for me as far as, predictions. I told you guys all off season long, I was like, I'm going to wait. I want to see, because last year I was wrong. And the year before that, I was wrong. And the year before that, I was wrong. I was like, let me see some games here. So we've gotten to the point where I'm going to watch these games this weekend, and I feel like I will have a great indication of what this team is really and truly going to be in terms of, can they be a tournament team? Can they host? Or is it going to be a problem this season? No changes for State in the rotation. Pico Khan tonight, as you're listening. Ben Davis on Saturday, Carson Ligon on Sunday. I think the fact that State did not go to Pruitt this week in the midweek means that they might want to have a look at him if things go south in any of these starts, that he could be that first guy out of the bullpen. And Stone Simmons as well, who hasn't pitched since his last Sunday start in Houston. Both those guys fully available. I like what I saw from State on Wednesday in that game. I like McPherson a lot. 2 innings, no hits, 4 strikeouts. The guy's just a good power pitcher. I don't know. Is there a Landon Sims in this group? I don't know, but can there be, a Cole Gordon in this group? Absolutely, there can be a guy like that, a guy that you can just trust coming out of the bullpen. And maybe, he makes it a little shakier than you'd like it sometimes. Sims didn't ever make it shaky. It was just the game was over. When you heard Whitesnake, the game was over. Other relievers, yeah, sometimes it gets a little, they give up a hit or two, but Cole Gordon was as reliable as they come that last year in 2019. So State needs to find a couple guys like that, and I feel like finding a guy like Cole Gordon was, or I'm trying to think back to like 2016. I'm trying who were they bringing out of the bullpen in 16? I can't. It's gonna bother me, but anyway, it's a lot easier to find reliable arms like that than it is to find a guy like Landon Sims. And I feel like State fans sometimes we get caught up in we got to find the next. There may never be another Landon Sims at Mississippi State, but there'll be plenty of guys who you can trust out of the bullpen. And I think State's got enough of those guys in this group that if they just get decent starting pitching, and I think that Pico can certainly be a guy who gives you better than decent starting pitching. And then, Davis, I love what I saw last week, but let's see it this week against Texas. I mean, talk about a step up of competition. I don't know that we've ever had a greater divide between the level of competition in your first start and your second start than Ben Davis is going to see this weekend. And then with Ligon was good last week, but again, but I'm hopeful with Ligon because, man, if he can just get some command and throw strikes, he's got all the tools to be a top guy. We'll see if that's the case. It's funny. I talked about State's hitting a lot on Sports Talk Mississippi on the Wednesday show and on the Wednesday Thunder and Lightning Live. And then, of course, they go out and they only have 4 hits and they score 2 runs. That's not a huge concern for me. Sometimes you just have that off night. I really like what this team is doing at the plate right now. I feel like you got balance up and down the order. I think a point that Robbie made was a good one. They changed the order up to let Stevens pitch, so he wasn't in the order. He's been a valuable bat these first 17 games. He's been really good for State. So maybe that making those changes and moving some guys around, it threw things off for a little bit. When they have the normal lineup back in there, I think you'll be fine this week. And then Sullivan, Stevens, Reese, Chance has been hitting the ball really, really well, and obviously Downs is so hot right now. You've got quality bats right now through the lineup. This weekend will be if we come through this weekend and they're still hitting, they're going to hit. That's how I would look at it. If we come out of this weekend, maybe State loses a game, but let's say they lose. Let's say they win 7-4, and then they win 8-5, and then they win. Let's say it's a little bit of a Sunday shootout, and then 9-7. Your bats are good at that point. You're going to be all right. State just for me, the gold standard of a lineup 1 through 9 is 2016. That team, I mean, Brent Rooker hit 7th and 8th sometimes in that lineup. They were just so deep. It was impossible to get through the order, basically. I don't know that State has that kind of quality 1 through 9, but even a guy like Dylan Cupp is hitting around 300, and he's batting number 9 for you. Sawyer Reeves has been able to pick it up at the plate just a little bit more since he's gotten back into the starting lineup. Interested to see what State does at second now. If Kupp's going to be back and he played on Wednesday, do they leave Reeves in? Do they want to leave Gatlin Sanders out there? I thought he's been playing pretty well. Garrett Fry is the leading hitter on the team, but it's a question of where can you put him in the lineup? Where does he go? Because defensively he hasn't been that great. You don't want him at first. It looks like Hines is going to get back into the swing of things. At second, I feel like he's a little bit of a liability, but his bat's so good. What are you going to do? So I don't know where you put him. But again, this is something that Lamonis has talked about a lot, and we've talked about it here on the podcast. The depth that State has on its bench is so much different than it was a year ago. I mean, you remember last year, there were times where State were putting guys, this is late in the season, State would be pinch hitting with a guy whose batting average was zero. It was zero. Spaletta and O'Brien at that point, they weren't getting hits. And now you've got a guy like Garrick Fry who's hitting 425, 430 on the bench. Aaron Downs was on the bench at times this year. I mean, that's a massive, massive upgrade for State in that one. I'm not going to make a prediction on this series. I don't think. I just because I want to see. Next week, I promise I'll get back into the business of making predictions. But with this one, I just want to see what happens. I just want to see how they look. I want to see how they handle SEC pitching. I want to see how the pitching handles SEC hitting. In my mind, I think it's going to go well. I said this prior to the season. I felt like last year kind of set the reset button on Mississippi State baseball. It was kind of like the router went down. You just had to unplug it and plug it back in. Last year was that. I think they're going to get back to the business of, and I've used that phrase twice, but they're going to get back into being able to host this year. I really, really do truly believe that. But I'm going to know for sure after this weekend. So you guys are just going to have to let me have the luxury of making my, have some hindsight here. I'll make my predictions on that. I really think State will get this Friday game. Pico's been really good this year. And then Saturday, Sunday, it just really depends on what Ben Davis is. If he's going to be a guy who can start and be a true SEC starter, then we're going to need to see that. And then with Carson Ligon, it's just about, limiting the early damage. You're hopeful that you got the depth in the bullpen that if you only get, 4 innings out of Ligon, that you can carry it through and still keep in quality arms there. But it's going to be about not being down 5-0 at the end of the second. That's the fear with Ligon right now. So I feel like State's going to have good chances. Now, obviously, this weather situation, as I'm recording now, it's 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. So I guess it technically was Future Brian just a few minutes ago, but it's technicalities. State has not released anything regarding baseball maybe being delayed or anything like that. Softball has already been delayed. They are playing a Friday doubleheader. And apparently, according to Caleb Hamill, who is doing some play-by-play for Mississippi State while Neil Price is tied up with baseball, or basketball, I should say. The SEC cannot do a Friday doubleheader unless there's an 80% chance of rain both Saturday and Sunday, which there is not. There's not a big chance of rain on Sunday. So there will be no Friday doubleheader. And as I'm speaking, I don't know, but by the time we do basketball, the basketball portion of this podcast, my guess is we'll have an answer on that, and this whole conversation will be moot at that point. But we'll get to it. So if you do a Sunday doubleheader, a couple of 7-inning games, but then there's TV. There's just all these issues that it's difficult to work around. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Mississippi State baseball this weekend. I think they've done in terms of where they were last year. Right, last year they had 5 losses. They were all bad losses. Not a single loss to a tournament team. They were all bad losses. This year, you have 4 losses to good teams. All right, Troy, Southern, Arizona, Oklahoma State will at least at the very least be fighting for spots in the NCAA tournament when we get to May. I think they're probably all going to end up being in, if I had to guess. So I think your resume is better than it was a year ago. State's RPI, last time I checked, was in the 80s. I'm pretty sure this time a year ago, State's RPI was well into the hundreds. Well into the hundreds. So if you come out of this weekend and you get 2 out of 3 from Texas, you're back on the path, and within the next 2-3 weeks you'll be in the top 25 in RPI, and you just sort of go from there. It would have been great to get a win in those 4 losses. If you had one more win, you'd be in just unbelievably good shape. But they're in better shape than they were a season ago. If they are able to duplicate what they did in conference play this year from last year, if they duplicate that, they will host. 17-13 with the losses they currently have will host. 17-13 with losses to Georgia Southern and Air Force and Austin Peay and I forget who else they lost to somebody on the coast. I can't remember who it was. That's not going to host. That's not getting the job done. This year they've gotten the job done, so you got to give them that at least. I feel like this team will host, but I want to see this weekend. I'm going to take full advantage of my executive privileges here on Thunder and Lightning to let you know that there will be no predictions from Brian Hadad. Now, Robbie Falk wants to make his predictions over on that on 3. That's fine by me. I'll let him go at it. If you want my thoughts, I think State will take the series. but I'm not going to make a prediction. Not going to be anything official. You cannot old takes expose me on any of this stuff. So big weekend for MSU baseball. I'm interested to see what the crowds look like. I think Friday crowd will be pretty good, and then we'll just have to see what the weather brings us as far as the rest of the weekend. But should be a lot of fun at Duty Noble Field. I am hopeful. I'm supposed to be out in the lounge on Saturday doing some cooking. I'm hopeful that will be the case. I would like to cook. I would like to. I've never cooked in the lounge before. I take it back. I have. But it was the last time I was behind the grill in the left field lounge was the Clemson Super Regional in 2007. Back when you could still just wheel a grill in as long as you could find a spot. We did that. Maybe the hottest I've ever been in my entire life. But we got the food cooked and we watched the baseball game and State went to the College World Series. So my return to the lounge this Saturday. If you're coming by, as long as you're not a Texas fan or a Texas player, if you want to grab a bite, if we've got some food, you're welcome to it. You're welcome to it. Only one Texas fan allowed to eat this weekend. Tyler Horka is going to be here. He's the only one. Nobody else. Nobody else in orange. Again, I'm wearing orange, but still, it says Giants. It's not a Texas shirt in any way, shape, or form. All right, let's move into our spring SEC preview. That's brought to you by our friends over at Two Brothers Smoked Meats in the heart of the Cotton District. Two Brothers Smoked Meats and the older brother, two of Brian Hadad's absolute favorite places to go in the city of Starkville, in the Golden Triangle, in the state of Mississippi. Call it what you will. I love Two Brothers, and I love the older brother. And if you're going to be here this weekend, you need to go check them out, and so that you can love them too. If you want to eat great barbecue, smoked Southern soul food, it's at Two Brothers. If you want to try a fancy sandwich, one of my favorite new restaurants. I'm telling you, I really think I like the older brother more, which is crazy because I love Two Brothers, but I love going to the older brother, man. The food there is just outstanding. I love the vibe in there. You need to go check it out. Two Brothers Smoked Meats and the older brother. Great products, great service. Every business likes to promise it to you. They deliver it to you at Advantage Business Systems. That's what they've been doing for 50 years. It's coming. It's coming. 50 years?
Hit it, brother.
If you need technology for your business, you know who to call. It's Advantage Business Systems. They'll take care of you with great name brands, great prices, but more importantly, they're going to take care of you with great service. Service after the sale. That's what makes the difference. That's what has kept Advantage Business Systems going for those aforementioned 50 years. 601-362-9192 or visit them online, absms.com. Find out how Advantage Business Systems will help your business do business. I remembered it. I knew that I would. How do you not remember a slogan you came up with? I don't know the answer to that, but I did it. I was just at Maroon & Co. I was just there. I bought a T-shirt to wear out in the lounge this weekend. First off, two things, and you have to forgive me for a little self-promotion, but it felt pretty damn good to buy a T-shirt off the rack. I don't remember the last time I was able to do that. Like, normally when I want to buy clothing, I got to order it from a Big and Tall or whatever. Just went in there and I was like, that'll fit, and I bought that. So that made me feel really good about myself. But more importantly, I was able to use my own Thunder 15 code to save 15% off. So I was just in there. What a selection they've got of polos, T-shirts, jerseys, hats. They got a whole wall full of cowbells and, of course, pullovers, polos, whatever it is you're looking for. It's right there, maroon and white at Maroon & Co. Go check it out. Thunder 15, 15% off. That's in the store or online for your next trip up here to Starkville. Head to Maroon & Co. All right, let's go to the interview I have today. I'm telling you, I feel like these interviews are kind of out of place right now. It just feels like it's early for football because State hasn't started yet, but we're gonna do them. We got to get through these. We got 15 interviews to do. We got to do them. Today is Florida. Very interesting team, in my opinion, in the SEC this year. We talked on Sports Talk Mississippi on Wednesday about who could be a potential Indiana of college football this year. The team that comes out of nowhere to be in the playoff. Florida's name was thrown out. And when you have an elite quarterback, that's a fair thought. So let's get into it. Graham Hall has been on the podcast with us many times before, covers the Gators for Swamp 24/7. Here's his thoughts on the 2025 Florida Gators and what they're looking to do this spring. Another step on the road of the spring previews. We're in Florida today to talk to Graham Hall from 24/7 Sports. Graham's been on the podcast with us a few times before, and this time a year ago, I think we talked, and it was like, man, this Florida team, this schedule, it's going to be really tough. And you got to give Billy Napier and that group a lot of credit. They found their way through and ended up being one of the surprise teams in the SEC. The schedule is equally as tough this year, but I feel like this is a more battle-hardened Florida team that we can actually have some expectations for.
Yeah, I think so. I think they did something that was really impressive was that they improved as the season went on. Sometimes when you take a couple of disappointing losses, you can see the will wane a little bit here. You can see guys lose their motivation. And Florida, dug deep. They locked in and made some improvements on the defensive end, especially here. There were some changes from their defensive coordinator set up with Ron Roberts moving into the box to have that bird's eye view to call plays. And then obviously DJ Lagway, was nothing short of really I hate to say revelation for Florida because everyone knew how talented he was, former five-star quarterback. The hype for him was considerable coming in, but for him to come in and elevate Florida's offense to be as explosive as it was, how good he was on deep throws, his mobility before the injury that he suffered against Georgia was just extremely impressive. And not to knock Graham Mertz whatsoever, because there's a lot that he brought to the table. And would Lagway have been as good without Mertz's leadership? I don't think so. But this team really made a lot of strides in the latter half of the season, ended the season on a 4-game win streak, and now they head into 2025 with a lot of expectations.
This is a veteran team. When you talk about returning starters, returning talent, maybe nobody in the SEC bringing back as many guys who have played for Florida as Florida is that going to be a situation where, you look at the spring, are there a lot of position battles that maybe aren't going to be happening? Do you feel pretty confident about, maybe putting together a two deep even here in early March?
I think there are still some questions here as we get into spring. Certainly, I think that, what they lost on the interior of the defensive line, having to replace Cam Jackson and Desmond Watson, they're going to have to identify probably an underclassman to fill that void in there. Obviously, you lose Shamar James as well. You're going to have one of the sophomores in either Miles Graham or Aaron Childs. Potentially, you could see some Jaden Robinson in the mix there as well. They're going to have to step in there, and you obviously know that you replace two key pieces at your front seven, you're going to risk losing a drop-off, and obviously they lost some pieces there on the edge as well, losing TJ Searcy to Texas A&M, Jack Pyburn heading to LSU, Justice Boone heading to Arkansas. You're going to need to identify some more depth pieces for the rotation, just knowing how much that position likes to rotate. They certainly have a lot of options there. They have LJ McCray coming back for his sophomore season. He's moved to Jack linebacker here, so he's going to have to drop into coverage a little bit as well as rush the passer, of course. Tyreek Sapp comes back after leading the Gators in sacks and tackles for loss. Getting Sapp and Caleb Banks back was probably the two biggest returnees for Florida's defense there, so that's certainly going to help them. And obviously getting Jake Slaughter and Austin Barber back at left tackle, and even Damian George, who had a strong season at right guard. That gives you a lot of stability there in the trenches, certainly. I think the biggest question mark for Florida right now is going to be in the secondary. They lose Will Harris to Miami, the safeties coach from last year. They lose Bea Razul, the cornerbacks coach. He takes a job with the Las Vegas Raiders. And then you lose Jason Marshall Jr., and you have a bunch of guys who are dealing with injuries here in spring camp. There are two guys who rotated in at the star position last season, Aaron Gates and Sharif Denson, are both rehabbing from injuries. Denson's going to be back a lot sooner than Aaron Gates is. Aaron Gates had a really, I want to call it just a torn ACL, but it was more than that. It was a devastating knee injury for him. There's some other things in there, some, cleanup that had to be done to his meniscus and his MCL there. So is he able to even return in 2025? It's a question, certainly. And right now, Florida's relying on either freshmen who have arrived as early enrollees or Josiah Davis, who comes back for his second season. Only took, I think, 17 or 18 snaps at the star position last year. So that is certainly a question mark. And then you also had a really impactful play from Triquez Bridges last year, who played safety and cornerback for Florida. They're going to have to identify someone else. Is it Cormani McLean? Is it one of the freshmen that they've added, Ben Hanks? They're going to get Onus Kananbani here as a summer enrollee. But that secondary, the third level of the defense, is probably a big question right now for Florida, which they're going to need to shore that up and have some impactful play there in the third level of the defense, because this defense made a lot of strides last year. They recorded 14 interceptions, a year removed from recording just 3 interceptions in 2023. They didn't give up nearly as many explosive plays as we saw during the first 2 seasons of the Napier era. That unit can't afford to regress if the Gators are going to maintain their upward trajectory.
So we already talked a little bit about Lagway, just a transcendent player, in my opinion, a guy who I expect to be not only just an all-SEC guy, but a potential All-American guy. But who are the stars around him? Who are going to come along for the ride at running back and wide receiver for the Gators?
I think Jaden Baugh is in for a massive year. He was really impactful as a freshman, had more than 600 rushing yards in a backfield that also had a senior leader in Montrell Johnson Jr., a guy who went over 3,000 yards for his career. Jaden Baugh is poised for an impactful season. Absolutely. I mean, a guy who just hit the ground running right away, a two-way player in high school. It is going to be, I think, a really promising year for him. He could flirt with the 1,000-yard mark, which we haven't seen too often here in Florida. It's been nearly, I think, a decade since we saw a running back go for over 1,000 yards in Gainesville. And that's part of why, that's part of because they rotate so much at the position there. You've had in recent years, Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne sharing carries. Trayon Webb was sharing carries with Johnson and Jaden Baugh last season. And Jacoby Jackson is a guy that I think is going to surprise a few people. He's a well-known name now in Gainesville, a former JUCO transfer, but he was really, really good last season as kind of that third down back. He gives you a good 1-2 punch with Jaden Baugh. Those two guys right there, I think, are going to lead the way in the backfield for Florida. But I think what has fans salivating the most is the talent that Florida has at wide receiver. You get Eugene Wilson, the third back. Trey Wilson was just great every time he had the ball in his hands, but just has been a little bit too banged up the last 2 seasons. He had that hip injury that only led him to play, 4 games last season. He got it cleaned up actually outside of Gainesville. It was a congenital issue, so he's been dealing with it for throughout his football career, and you hope that now that that is fixed, he's going to be able to unlock his true potential there. You have Aiden Mizell, Tank Hawkins, 2 guys who hit over 23 miles per hour as well. You factor in a couple of the additions that they got, I think from their 2025 recruiting class, you could make the case easily that the most impressive position that they identified and landed was at the wide receiver position. Vernell Brown III is going to play as a freshman. He is too dynamic, too talented, mature, ahead of the curve, where you're going to get him on the field. And then Dallas Wilson, former 5-star signee, a guy who looked like he was headed to Oregon on early signing day, changed his mind, was released by the Ducks, and landed with the Gators. That is a physically developed freshman, 6'3", 216 pounds. He is going to play. And you also have a couple of veterans that come back. Khalil Jackson is someone who, coming off a torn ACL, when will he be available? But he was a starter from week 1 for the Gators. So just a veteran presence. And then they're really high on the guy that they landed in the portal, J. Michael Sturdivant out of UCLA. He was someone who was either going to go to another team in the SEC, or he was going to head to the NFL draft. He's got great speed and size. He is going to absolutely be a player for the Gators. So they have options at wide receiver once again, and that should lead to some more, from what we've heard, 4 and 5 wide sets for a team that really has relied on 11 and 12 man personnel, with running back and 3 tight ends, or two tight ends, or a tight end and 3 receivers recently. So you're looking to get all those guys who have impressive athleticism on the field, and that's probably the skill positions that I think have a lot of people optimistic that Florida is going to continue to have a more explosive offense than we saw really the first 2.5 years in Gainesville, and it's because of Lagway and the talent they have in the backfield and at wideout.
All right, be it a freshman or a transfer, who's the new face you've got the biggest eyes on this spring?
That's a good question. I think that Dallas Wilson is certainly one that's an obvious answer in my mind. Just one of the top players from the state of Florida. Vernell Brown, you can make a case for as well. Absolutely. I think those 2 guys, even in a crowded wide receiver room, are going to command targets this season. That just seems to be apparent for me. I think Ben Hanks, a UF legacy, is going to impress a lot of people. I think he's going to be the next freshman corner who plays early at Florida, even with Cormani McLean. And you obviously, get Devin Moore back after he's been kind of dealing with some injuries the last couple of years, but he was a starter alongside Jason Marshall Jr. I think Ben Hanks is going to push for a role within this defense. And those are probably the most obvious names that I can think of right off the top of my head here. Ty Jackson probably is a sleeper candidate to see the field as a freshman. I really even shouldn't say sleeper. They're extremely high on him. He was the number one linebacker target on their board. They get him. He backs up a commitment from USC. It just seems like a position that the last couple of years we've seen freshmen play a role in, that front seven. And I think that he is going to be a guy who does just that. Even with Miles Graham and Aaron Childs coming back, getting Grayson Pup Howard back as well, Jaden Robinson. I mean, there's 4 linebackers right there who are ahead of him right now in the pecking order. But Ty Jackson just has an impressive skill set. He's physically developed. I think he's going to push for playing time this season.
All right, this is the question we're asking everybody who does these preview interviews with me. So it's March 11th as we're recording today. If I come back to you the day after the Florida State game, what are you telling me about this Florida Gator team?
I think that they continue to trend in the right direction. I think that they're going to be better than FSU. Maybe that's not a bold prediction here necessarily after how, you were talking 2-10 for Mississippi State. FSU fans are right there with you, but they have a significant investment in Mike Norvell. And I think for Florida, this is a brutal schedule. You got to play LSU and Texas early in the year. The schedule got even tougher a couple of weeks ago with Texas changing their schedule and now having a bye week before facing Florida. You got to play LSU in early September, which usually that game is a little bit later in the season in my mind. And obviously Georgia is as good as they've been in recent years. I'm intrigued by the Bulldogs because of the questions that they have at quarterback with Carson Beck transferring out, Gunnar Stockton. I haven't seen enough of him to believe that he is going to be this guy who's going to do what Beck did 2 years ago and lead the SEC in passing yards, despite Beck's play leaving a little bit to be desired. This is a Georgia team that has just continually recruited well and getting over that hump of beating the Bulldogs. I'll see it when I believe it. But with that said, I think it's possible if you have a fully healthy Lagway, because Florida was leading in that game back there on November 2nd. Through the first, quarter and a half before Lagway exited due to that hamstring strain. So it certainly isn't out of the question in my mind. The interesting, schedule change as well with facing Tennessee in November. We haven't seen that too much. I think I was 9 years old the last time that happened. So I don't really have great memories of that. So it's going to be obviously an interesting battle. But I do think that Florida is an 8-win team here this season. I think that they're going to have a chance to start on the right path. They don't have to open with a team like Miami this season. They get to kind of have a tune-up. No offense to Long Island, but they get to tune up with Long Island in week 1 of the season, which I think
could give some offense to Long Island. It'll be all right.
I'm sure they're great guys, and I'm sure that they are fighting hard. It's just the talent gap, obviously. Yeah. Let's be quite honest here. Anything but a blowout where Florida doesn't get the freshman in the game from the jump, it would probably be a disappointment in Gainesville. So I think there are certainly some tough question marks to answer. This is going to be an LSU team that is much improved. I think Brian Kelly is a better coach than he gets credit for. Garrett Nussmeier coming back is certainly a question, of could he be one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC? I think he can. I think that he has the skill set, and he's going to be more comfortable, more of a veteran quarterback this season here. And then obviously Texas, you can't count out Arch Manning whatsoever. I'm a very big fan of Arch Manning. Those 2 games right there are going to be a tough test for Florida, where maybe they start the season 4-4, have to play Miami earlier in the season as well. Obviously, Tennessee is a team that is going to reload, but I think there's a path to 8 wins for Florida. And if they can get to a bowl game, get 9 wins again whatsoever, they should have a chance to be a ranked team by the end of the season. If all goes according to plan for Florida and they avoid some injuries here and keep Lagway healthy and protect him with a offensive line that returns 4 or 5 starters, this is a team that has a chance to have a more complete year rather than just the narrative being that they finished strong and figured some things out. They have a chance to start strong and finish strong this season, and I think that is what a lot of people are looking to see. The schedule is brutal. It's going to come down to a lot of games are going to come down to 1 or 2 plays here, and sometimes you're not going to find yourselves out on the right side of them, but being more competitive in the SEC and winning some games that you didn't last year is the key for this Florida program. If they can get to 9 wins with this schedule, with everything that they have to face, I think it'll be an impressive year, even though Florida fans right now are already in the mindset, at least the majority we talk to, that this should be the year that Florida pushes for a spot in the college football playoff. You think you're in year 4 with the head coach. You've signed multiple top 10 recruiting classes. You've landed well in the transfer portal. Why not Florida is the mindset. If it's not going to happen in year 4 with this roster with Billy Napier, is it going to happen? I think it's a fair question. And so expectations are very high for a team that finished the year with a 4-game win streak, and understandably so in my mind.
We shall see what the Gators have to bring this upcoming season. Of course, Mississippi State will head down to Gainesville midseason to take on the Florida Gators. So we'll see how that one pans out when we get there. Graham, always appreciate your time, man, and great stuff as always. Graham Hall, Swamp 24/7, man. Talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Pleasure's always mine. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Graham for his time. Really, really appreciate him as always. Here's the thing about Florida. They have an elite quarterback. Lagway, elite. Could be potentially all SEC quarterback this year. When I go to media days in Atlanta, I'm between him and Arch Manning, to be honest with you, as far as who I'm going to write in for my first team all SEC quarterback. The talent level is huge. I think the ceiling for him is Cam Newton. I'm really, really high on him. But I'm not high on Napier. I'm just not. I just don't think he's a very good coach. Now, he might be able to do what Gene Chizik did and ride an elite quarterback to success. And luckily for him, he's going to get 2 or 3 years out of that kid as opposed to only 1 for Chizik. But at the same time, this schedule is still incredibly difficult. Miami is still going to be really good, and you got to go there. I think Florida State will be better. You know, that's one of the things that Florida benefited from a season ago is their final 2 games. They should have not beaten Ole Miss. Ole Miss should be embarrassed for losing that game. And then they got Florida State, who preseason was a top 10 team, and they went 2-10. So if everything had held according to plan, they easily lose those last 2 games. They didn't. To their credit, they won them, and they played good football. But this year, I don't know that they're catching anybody by surprise there. So I really think they're going to – it's going to be a tougher season for Florida than maybe some people think it's going to be. But we'll see. Like I said, when you have an elite quarterback, that elevates everything for you. And they bring back a lot of guys from a season ago. They've recruited well. That I just don't like the head coach. I just don't think Napier's a great head coach. We're going to find out for sure. All right. Back on Sunday, and boy, what a podcast that's going to be. We'll wrap up baseball. Huge series for Mississippi State. Selection Sunday will have happened. We'll know where Mississippi State men and women's basketball are headed for the big dance. Plus, who knows what else we'll talk about between now and then. Have a great weekend, guys. Talk to you again soon. For Robbie Falk, who isn't here, I'm Brian Hadad. Thanks for listening to Thunder and Lightning here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.